Hi, I'm Jeff with Kudzu Craft. I'm working on reskinning my slingshot. As you can see, my helper here, if you want to call her that, is going to assist with me. I think she just wants to be on TV. I'm working with a new stitch that I've not shown before. I think it's going to be a real good one. It pulls the fabric on really tight, and I'm thinking this 11.5 ounce fabric is going to be an advantage to sew it on tightly. Yeah, minimize the shrinkage because it shrinks, but it takes a lot of heat. By the way, I think from what I'm seeing, this is going to be a very durable fabric. So if catnip doesn't get in there way too bad, I'm going to show you how to stitch this up and the method I'm using now. I'm going to show you a little different method than I've used in the past. If you've watched my other videos, you know that I've always gone down through here, pulled the fabrics up like this, stitched them, rolled it, and done a whip stitch. I have done this once before on a little rowing boat. I've got a, back up here, I've got a piece of cording in here. This is actually the 3/16 rope I sell. You could use something else. That's just, a parachute cord would be good. It would make a nice fine bead down through here. You can see the double beaded looks, what I call it. It waves a little. It's very, very difficult to get it perfectly straight. What I'm doing is I've got that in here. I've got some of these clamps to hold it just to keep it from falling off and dropping down in the boat. And I roll it between my fingers. And so I've got it right here at the top. And you've got to have just the right gap to pull this tight. I've been working on this boat. This is the last section of it. So I know exactly what my gap needs to be in order to get the tension I want. But I'm going through with that needle right under the cord. I'm going through both layers. See, there's my second layer, right through both. And I will stop just through there, go on this side, first stitch right behind that's the hardest, same thing. Wiggle it around, get the gap just right, go through. So still got my gap pretty close right there. Go over here, roll that around, stitch again, right up against the cord, just under it. Back and forth 2 or 3 times. Looser fabric, you can do more. This fabric I can't make but more than about 4 stitches. But still pull it good and tight. Oops. That's your normal. I've got a dowel pin over here. Use a dowel for leverage. Wrap it around there. Pull it tight. And watch how much that closes up. I mean, it's really tight. Take these hemostats. Take one. Tie it off. Listen. Tight skin and it's finished. There's nothing else to do. That's a good tight joint. You got to look. You got no gap in there. If you've got a gap, you're not pulling it tight enough. Or maybe you've got too big a gap you tried to sew, but you want them to touch. That doesn't need any shrinking. There's no wrinkles. I have been doing this stitch the way I've done it in the past. Get this cord off here. I have taken that cording. I've gone down through here and I've done a running stitch. I go on this side, do a running stitch. Then with the cording stitched in place, you know, that gap, I'm going back doing a 3rd stitch and pulling them together. Well, I started out doing one and then doing what like I'm doing here, and now I've gone one step further and taken it and just doing a single stitch. And this has cut down the time dramatically it takes to do this stitch. I am really impressed. We'll have to see how it holds up, you know, in the long run. But so far I am really impressed with what I'm seeing. All right, I'm to the end of the boat, and this is just kind of an FYI. Now, Slingshot is a very small boat. I mean, you can see by the size of my hand, there's not much stern back here. Very low volume. And what is happening, I have very little fabric here, which means I have even less stretch in the fabric than I had to start with down at the other end. So it's getting kind of difficult to sew. What I'm having to really watch, I had to take a bunch of stitches out, is I didn't realize, you can see how this wrinkles up. I'm having to make sure I pull this tight, pull the slack out, and adjust my gap. I was sewing for several inches there and I realized that it was just loose over here. It looked good and tied up here, but it wasn't pulling up. So that's something to kind of watch for. Also, I'm not making as many stitches before I pull it tight. I'm only going back and forth a couple of times so I can test it, because I'm having to just constantly adjust my gap as I go. And I say I'm still having to work with a very small gap right here. Now that's going to be too wide, unless it slacks out. It gets a little tight, and so this is part of it. It won't be as bad on most boats. Most are not this low volume and this small on the end. But see, my fingers get tired, so sore. So I'm using block to push. Put one more stitch in right there. Catching that cord. There we go. And then I'm going ahead, even just a couple stitches, pulling it tight, checking my fit. Okay, closed up. Every time I think it's not going to close up. Clamp that off. Very tight. But say, just be very cautious and aware down through here, and be sure to lean over and look at this side. And it's going to be fun doing this last little bit here.